Hello friends! After almost 7 years, 4A Games is finally back with another Metro game, and this one is set to launch in winter 2026. From the reveal trailer, we're heading straight back into the dark tunnels of the Moscow Metro, and we're right in the middle of a brand new conflict. Hunter, yes, the same Hunter from the original Metro 2033, is apparently now leading an authoritarian regime called Novoreich, who rules through propaganda and fear while subjugating the population in the name of a new war for the surface, presumably against the familiar enemy from the previous games, the Dark Ones. And this time we play as an unknown stranger who is being haunted by violent waking nightmares. I mean, because if not us, then who, right? What's especially interesting is that Metro 2039 seems to be moving away from the more open structure of the last game, and going back to the formula that made the series stand out in the first place. It is being described as a dense, authored, single-player corridor survival FPS, with a much bigger focus on psychological horror. And on top of that, Dmitry Gluchovsky is working with 4A Games on it as well, which is honestly a big deal. The devs also talked about how the message behind the game changed after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and honestly, that part hits hard. They spoke about power outages, drone and rocket attacks, and not knowing when they'll next be able to do something as basic as heat food for their families. So instead of being about prevention as previous games, this game is now much more about consequences and the cost of silence. As a Ukrainian myself, I genuinely can't help but root for this game with all my heart. And that's before you even get into the business side of it. Metro is already a very strong franchise. The last game hit 10 million copies sold a few years ago, and with a trailer that looks as good as this, proven developer track record, and a clear creative identity, I can't think of anything that might stand in their way. And honestly, I can't wait to play this new masterpiece. Now, some new details have been floating around about that God of War spin-off from Santa Monica Studio, the one that supposedly focused on Faye, the deceased wife of Kratos. According to MP First, Faye won't be the only familiar face in it. Tyr is also set to appear while Kratos might only show up briefly. Apparently the game could also include a pretty weird companion setup, with something like a gelatinous cube and even a talking sword that's supposedly Merlin of all people, which already sounds a little wild, but I'll take it, I guess. The biggest rumor by far is that the game may feature multiple mythologies instead of sticking to just one pantheon. The report mentions Mayan, Chinese, Japanese, and maybe even more. If that turns out to be true, that's kind of a huge shift for the series. There is also talk that a new mainline game is in development, and we already know the original trilogy is being remade. So yeah, Santa Monica definitely doesn't sound bored right now. But obviously this is still a rumor, so take it all with a grain of salt. That said, the broader strategy does make sense. Every God of War game has felt bigger and more intense than the last one, especially with Ragnarok reaching more than 15 million copies sold in a year. But now it looks like Sony wants to go wide instead of big, and honestly using a spin-off like this to test different mythologies is very smart. It gives Sony a chance to see which new setting fans connect the most, all without forcing the next mainline game to commit too early. At the same time, it can also work as a lore bridge. With all that said, my only concern here is the PC side of things. If Sony is leaning harder into exclusivity again, then a major flagship IP like God of War could absolutely be used as leverage. The last two games did make it to PC eventually, sure, but eventually is the key word here. There is no guarantee that it'll keep happening, so I'm really hoping I'm wrong on that one. If you thought there were no good pirate games out there, Windrose might make you rethink that. For anyone who hasn't seen it yet, Windrose is a PvE survival game that sits somewhere in the space between Skull and Bones and Sea of Thieves. It's got the classic build, craft, survive formula, plus combat, exploration, and both land and sea gameplay. It also supports up to 8 players in co-op with both self-hosted and dedicated servers. And the launch has been kind of crazy. Just 2 days into early access, the game had already hit 500,000 players, which is seriously impressive for something that isn't free to play. On top of that, its concurrent player numbers are already pushing close to 200,000 and still climbing. Reviews are sitting at very positive too. And a lot of players are basically saying the same thing. Finally, somebody made the pirate game we've actually been waiting for. That makes this even more notable because pirate games as a genre have been all over the place. Sure, Sea of Thieves became kind of a massive success and passed 40 million players, but Skull and Bones, on the other hand, never really came close to that level. So for Windrose to come out swinging like this is a pretty big deal. Now, to be fair, there is always the early access question. Some of the positive things about the numbers absolutely come down to curiosity and novelty, but the game is still fairly limited in content. On the flip side, it feels like one of those games that knows exactly what it does well, and that alone can carry a lot of momentum early on, especially in the survival genre. The real challenge starts right about now with a big question mark, whether Kraken Express can actually build on this momentum and turn a great launch into long-term success. Because this is their debut project, and once you move into live ops, the execution risks go through the roof. So yeah, incredible start, but the hardest part is definitely just beginning. Earlier this year we talked about Ubisoft shutting down one of its studios in Halifax and about the lawsuit from CWA Canada. Well, now it looks like the situation has finally been resolved. According to the official announcement, 61 employees who lost their jobs voted overwhelmingly in favor of a settlement after CWA negotiated with Ubisoft. And from the sound of it, those negotiations were not easy. The actual terms of the settlement, however, haven't been made public. But it does seem like the affected workers were satisfied with the outcome and thanked the union for getting the deal done. And while it's obviously good that those workers got at least some kind of compensation, it's still deeply frustrating that this whole thing had to happen in the first place. We still can't say with absolute certainty that the studio closure was directly tied to the union effort, because studios are being shut down all the time right now, but the timing is hard to ignore. And honestly, speaking as someone who works in the industry, stuff like this is constantly stressful. Game development is one of the most passionate industries I've ever seen. People put in absurd amount of effort because they genuinely care about what they make. I've honestly never seen so many people give 110% of themselves every single day. Not in any other industry I've worked in. And I seriously doubt that this is unique to just a few studios I've been a part of, which is exactly why it's so maddening to see corporations keep taking advantage of that passion, closing studios that still has something to offer, denying severance, delaying salaries, and of course our beloved crunches. After all that commitment and all that sacrifice, you'd think people would at least be treated fairly and with some respect. But apparently that only happens once lawyers get involved. Also, quick thing, if you don't know who I am, my name is Alex, I'm a game producer and I'm here to help you get caught up on everything that's going on in the video game industry. Ashes of Creation might be dead, but the drama around it is still very much alive. Not too long ago, a bunch of allegations surfaced around Intrepid Studios CEO Steven Sheriff, accusing him of spending millions of crowd-funded dollars on a luxury lifestyle instead of on the game. We're talking private chefs, cigars, trading cards, mansion rentals, that kind of thing, which are pretty serious allegations. Now Sheriff has responded with an 11-page document denying all of it. He called the claims false and defamatory, said they were being pushed by people with their own agenda tied to an ongoing federal court battle, and specifically denied any misuse of Kickstarter funds. He also said the project was financed through multiple sources, including a substantial amount of his own money. And honestly, at this point, there is really no way to know who's telling the full truth. But I will say this, for a studio and a project that are supposedly done, there is still an awful lot of smoke here for everyone to keep insisting there is no fire. Right now every side seems to be trying to control the narrative while litigation is still hanging over all this. And that's the part I find most depressing. This was once one of the highest profile Western crowdfunded MMO project of the last decade. It was kind of a game people had pinned real hopes on. And now this whole thing has collapsed into a massive mess of accusations, denials, and legal fights. Looking at the level of hostility between the studio leadership and investors though, maybe this is the ending that was always going to happen. It's been a while since we heard anything substantial about Netflix's Gears of War adaptation, but now there's finally an update. According to Insider Gaming, the director recently reconfirmed that the movie is still happening, and said they already have a draft that's in really good shape. He also said the coalition is very excited about it, Netflix is fully behind the project, and with Gears of War E-Day on the horizon, everything is apparently lining up. Now, before anyone gets too excited, I really wouldn't expect this movie to launch anywhere near the game. E-Day is still scheduled for 2026, and if the movie is genuinely as big as it sounds, then realistically it's probably still years away from release. Still, this is yet another sign that movie and TV studios have found a very profitable new lane, game adaptations. It really does feel like a gold rush right now with them. That said, there are always concerns with this stuff. The biggest one obviously is how closely they'll stick to the source material. Because we've all seen what happens when adaptation teams decide they need to reimagine everything and end up pushing away the people who cared in the first place. Since we still know basically nothing about the plot, cast or release date, it's honestly a little hard to get too hyped just yet. And lastly, another award ceremony took place recently in London, although chances are you've probably already seen most of the winners by now. Unsurprisingly, a lot of the trophies went to Expedition 33, which picked up Best Game, Debut Game and Performer in a Leading Role for Jennifer English. Right behind it was Dispatch, which also took home 3 awards, including Animation, Audio Achievement and Performer in a Supporting Role. And obviously Arc Raiders won Best Multiplayer. So yeah, pretty much nothing new all around. But looking at the results, I don't really have many complaints here, which is honestly refreshing because this is not usually how I feel after award shows like the Game Awards, for example. The only thing that does stand out to me is how early British awards always feel. Also, the really interesting part is that the biggest winners here were debut projects. And that's not something you see every day. Hardly anyone knew much about Kepler Interactive or Ad Hoc Studios, then suddenly they're everywhere and everyone is talking about them. And when you add to the fact that both of those major winners are single-player games with zero live service baggage attached, I really do think that some of the bigger publishers need to sit down and seriously reconsider how many eggs they're putting into the live service basket. And that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know what you think about Metro 2039, if you're excited for the God of War spin-off featuring multiple mythologies, and if you played Windrose already, let me know what you think. As usual, if you want to know more, all links are down below. And of course, clicking the like button helps this channel a lot and I personally highly appreciate it. Thank you for making it this far, and with that, Alex is signing off for today. Cheers!